Good morning, Bulavinaka and Namaste to everyone listening this morning and watching us here on Fijivillage Straight Talk. We are here with the head of the Vaccination Task Force, Dr. Rachel Devi, again taking out time to talk to us in relation to the latest on vaccination for COVID-19. Of course, we've seen widespread community transmission in the Suva Nosori area, and now concerning evidence coming in from the Western Division with more than 4,000 active cases of COVID-19 in the West, a real concern, with deaths also increasing and severe cases in the Western Division. Dr. Rachel, a lot has been done in the past week. First of all, on vaccination rate, where do we sit at the moment?
Thanks, Vijay. It's always a pleasure to join you in this show in Straight Talk. And as we always share the statistics, and people may have known, and it's on our dashboard. As of yesterday evening, we're sitting at about 84.4% of our target population for first doses. And our second doses is now sitting at around 27%. And now we're definitely seeing a significant increase in our second doses as of, I think, last week or two. And I'm confident that this number will significantly increase this week and in the coming weeks, because this is about the time the 8th week has passed for a lot of people who got their jabs from the time we started in terms of, especially within the Suva Nosori corridor. So it's also, really nice to see the second jabs coming up.
Yeah, it's really good to see the second jabs coming up, and also we can see the first doses, a number of people going through the drive-through and other vaccination sites as well, with, of course, the August 1st deadline for people to be only allowed to enter the workplace if they have the first dose by August 1st. Now, Dr. Rachel, in relation to vaccination targets, of course, it was earlier stated 80%, but we know that the Ministry of Health, your team, is targeting more than 90%.
Thank you. So as I think previously announced by Dr. Fong, of 80% to reach the target of the age-eligible individuals to be vaccinated, we definitely, while 80% is the target, but we definitely aspire to get more than 90%, even above 95% would be great. Because we know one of the important things to note is that the higher the vaccination numbers in the country, the better the herd immunity kicks in. And that is an important concept, especially for our children as well, the vulnerable. But that's an important thing. Like the more the individuals in Fiji are vaccinated, the better our level of protection. And I must say, it's not just about how getting that high vaccination coverage, but getting that earlier. We're still seeing a number of deaths. Even a single death is a number. It's a person, it's a family member, it's a close loved one to someone. So even that is a number. So the earlier everybody gets their first jab, and the earlier they get that level of protection, the better it is. But definitely, like you mentioned, Vijay, we definitely, as a ministry, we're going way above 80% and trying to get to that above 90% as well as we speak.
Now, the issue with the Delta variant, of course, that is creating havoc in other countries as well, cases increasing in countries like the US, Australia. They're trying to grapple with the situation. Of course, with Fiji, we are seeing that situation here, at least in the Central and Western Division at the moment, with people getting fully vaccinated. There seems to be some people still thinking that they cannot get COVID-19 if they are fully vaccinated, or they cannot get reinfected after they've gotten COVID-19. Can you clear the air for the people listening?
Thanks, Vijay. Yes, that's an important question. And I think I must say, being pretty clear from the very beginning, from day one, when we started the whole vaccination rollout program, even from early March, we made it very clear, look, the vaccine is there to protect you from severe disease, from hospitalization and from death. It may not, halt that transmission process. So an individual fully vaccinated can still get the virus and can transmit to the others, can become a carrier in itself. And some may just have very mild symptoms or even be asymptomatic, not even knowing that they're COVID positive. So obviously that still stands. And but one of the things to note is, to date, we have not had a single death of an individual who is fully vaccinated. So, and even those who had died with just one jab, they died, their first dose was like just between I think 7, 14, 21 days or so from getting that first jab, and the other comorbid issues as well that kicks in. That's one of the very important reasons, Vijay, we've been talking about it from the very beginning, that if you have a comorbid issue, please don't wait. Get rightfully informed, make that decision quickly and get vaccinated, because that's one thing that will protect us from severe disease and death. And and one of the other things also to note is if you are severely ill at home and not vaccinated, or even with one dose or something, and you're not progressing well enough, like for example, you're getting quite symptomatic, you're getting quite breathless, your respiratory symptoms are quite bad, don't wait for too long at home. You need urgent medical attention, because the breath of life is so important for an individual. You don't breathe for a certain number of seconds and etc. We could die. So that breath of life is so important. And when individuals have this low oxygen levels in their body, that definitely affects other things as well. So I think it's very important that we individuals take that into consideration. Apart from fully vaccinated, one can get positive, and even if you're partially vaccinated, obviously you can get positive, and the symptoms may differ from one person to the other. But I must say, I think I must encourage every individual out there to get vaccinated as soon as possible.
We have definitely lost a number of people in relation to them not getting vaccinated, not fully vaccinated, and of course just having one dose. You've heard stories of people, what they go through if they are not vaccinated. Maybe it's important to share with the people what people would go through if they do not have this layer of protection.
That's a good and important question as well. With not having this layer of protection, an individual could present with severe COVID-like symptoms. And, it's all out there, the fevers, the respiratory distress syndrome, basically, one of the main ones. And that really gets to us. And, with COVID, we have seen that there is a lot of mucus development, and that's what clogs up our lungs and makes it very difficult to, breathe. So having said that, these are an individual gets affected with this, a young chap or even a bit older may be able to pull through with it, especially with no comorbid issues. But one of the things we are seeing is that individuals with comorbid issues, no vaccination, and they get affected with COVID, they do present quite severely. And it's unfortunate, but we do see, we've been seeing deaths almost, I think it's every day, more than a few. Just I think one day in the weekend where there was just 2, but there's been, and now we are seeing deaths in the Western as well. And unfortunately, these deaths are again amongst those unvaccinated. So to prevent those severe disease, the symptomatic things from COVID, this is what the vaccine's here for. And you can't bank on it that, okay, you think you got COVID and you haven't gotten tested, let me go get a jab. It doesn't work like that. You need to give your immune system time to build up against the COVID virus. With the vaccine, administration of the vaccine, you need to give it time. And it just doesn't happen in a day or 2. It happens in a matter of weeks. So that's essential.
Now, some people have said that they got their first dose of AstraZeneca, and the date that was given for them was 12 weeks. When it started, of course, everyone was given a date 12 weeks from the first dose. They then could not present themselves to a health facility to get vaccinated because they got sick. Now, they didn't go for tests for COVID, so we do not know whether they had COVID or just had normal flu or headaches, etc. What is the solution for them? Or do they go and get their second dose? Have they run out of time because it's gone past 12 weeks? What's your advice to them?
Thank you, Vijay. An important question. Yeah, currently we with all COVID positive patients, if you've had dose 1, dose 2, we were deferring it. And that was almost by a period of 90 days. But being mindful, having said that, while we talk about 90 days, this was the initial WHO guidelines, protocols we were following by their technical advisors. But having said that, there is progress in that place, and we may soon release some other information around that. But, we follow science quite closely, and we look into that. But as things progress, we'll advise. But right now, I know with the 1st of August, no jab, no job policy, we did give a few exemptions for positive cases of a 90-day grace period to get the second dose. But if those individuals who had their first jab didn't know either of their COVID status, or maybe they would just had something else altogether, and you've passed the 12-week, you still can definitely go and get vaccinated with your second dose. There is a grace period there. But one of the important things I really want to reiterate is that it's important for an individual to get fully vaccinated, as in with 2 doses. And, having said all that, I must say that, this COVID vaccine is it hasn't been even a year it's come into, when it was endorsed for emergency use listing. So there is even a likely chance that in the coming years, an individual could get just a booster dose. And it's almost like saying, for example, if I can give an example, like tetanus vaccines. Tetanus vaccine an individual gets every 5 years. It gives you that immunity for every 5 years. Similarly, time will tell us when do we need a booster dose, or if we do need a booster dose at all or not for COVID-19. So this is something, these things progress. But in the interim, like you asked, for those who are COVID positive and had 1 dose already, can get their vaccine after then, with the exemption of the 90 days, unless you hear a policy change from the Ministry of Health in the coming days or so. But those who don't even know their status and are absolutely feeling well after, but have passed 12 weeks of their second dose, can still go ahead and get their vaccine. And I highly recommend getting your second dose because that's essential.
Now, people are also asking, of course, they can calculate their 8 weeks after their first dose and get the date that they can get vaccinated after the 8-week window for their second dose. Do all of them get messages from the MOH to tell them when their second dose is due, or do they calculate themselves if the message does not come through?
The message should come through if you registered with a mobile phone number. But sometimes I do know some people have used other individuals' numbers, so that message could have gone to that individual number because the mobile numbers are a mandatory field for us. But having said that, if individuals have not gotten their message for some unforeseen reason, they can definitely calculate the 8 weeks from that first dose period. And anytime after 8 weeks, they can get their second jab. And nobody should be turned away from any vaccination site. I know some were. I apologize for that, but we've cleared the air on the ground. Just bear with us. And we know that there are people changing shifts and everything because we have a bigger team. It's not just health team, but there's also the other teams, defense forces and all that are part of us. Sometimes people get turned away from the very entrance, so apologize for that. But we've spoken with everybody. It's pretty clear that anyone after 8 weeks can get vaccinated right across Fiji.
Issue in relation to pregnant women. Of course, Moderna has come in. That was a huge blessing for us to get those doses in from the United States of America. How is the uptake of Moderna amongst pregnant women, as that was also a priority amongst the other vulnerable members of the population?
Thanks, Vijay. That's a good question. I mean, with Moderna vaccine in the country, which was targeted for around 75,000 individuals with the 150,080 doses that we had. So basically, the uptake has been really good right across Viti level. And I believe last week we had announced that not just for pregnant women in the Western, but any individual above 60 could get the Moderna vaccine as well. So the uptake has been good right across Vitilevu. As you know, we've mainly deployed the Moderna vaccine here. And, the beauty about it is that within 28 days, you get your second jab. That's really helpful to boost up our immunity there. So I think overall the uptake's been good.
Dr. Rachel, in relation to pregnant women, of course, questions coming up whether they can breastfeed and look after their baby if they do have COVID-19. What's your message to them?
That's an important question, and I know a lot of people have asked us that question. So basically, I'll probably answer it in two ways. Firstly, for breastfeeding women who got COVID, can they breastfeed? Yes, you can. The virus does not pass through. If anything, the antibodies would. Basically what's developed within you that will pass through. But, the other thing to note is at the same time, you're protecting yourself and your child as well with the antibodies that pass through to the child through breastfeeding. So definitely you can breastfeed. And the other thing is some have even asked, I got vaccinated, can I still breastfeed? Absolutely, yes, you can. You should. We encourage that. There's nothing that should stop, because the breast milk currently, we say that's obviously the best milk a child could have when they're born, because that gives them all the protection. The first 6 months of life for a child is very vulnerable. And that vulnerability, is overcome by the mom's protection passing over to the child. So that's so essential that breastfeeding continues regardless of what happens. I think we should definitely encourage breastfeeding for all moms out there, and because it definitely gives that additional layer of protection for their child as well. So definitely encourage that right across for COVID positive moms, as well as for those who are vaccinated and they're not COVID positive, but you are vaccinated and you're questioning, can I breastfeed or not? Of course, there's a straightforward answer to that one.
Dr. Rachel, we had an unfortunate death of an 11-month-old boy from Delhi, Valilevu. And of course, parents still asking the question about what is the decision on vaccination for children. Of course, people asking about children as young as 6 months up on when WHO and Ministry of Health we look for some options for vaccination, which of course are safe for children. How much work has gone into this area, and do we expect a decision soon?
Thanks, Vijay. Yes, I agree. I mean, we've had 2 deaths in Fiji, which were not in the eligible criteria. That's a 15-year-old and now an 11-month-old child, unfortunately. I mean, and unfortunately, they weren't eligible for vaccinations as yet. While we know for the 12 to 17, we've globally, there's been endorsement of the Pfizer vaccine, and recently with the European Union, there's the endorsement of the Moderna vaccine for 12 to 17. While the WHO is also looking at all these documents to regulate it from their perspective as well. But Vijay, one of the important things to note is vaccines were initially made for that young population. The only reason we're not administering in that population is because of safety issues. And unless we know that these vaccines are safe in this population, we cannot administer them. And it goes back to safety issues. And we know from the very beginning that if we introduce any vaccines in the country, it has to have undergone those safety checks and endorsements by WHO. I mean, I don't think so at any point in time the ministry would want to risk any child on the vaccination if there's no safety checks on that. It could be more harmful than good for the children. But although having said that, vaccines were from the very early days made for these children, and the majority of our vaccination programs lies around this population as well on an year in, year out basis, right from the time they're born to the time they in school as well. So unless we have safety data and we're satisfied with that safety data, Similarly, what we did with these vaccines, the AstraZeneca and the Moderna vaccines that we've got in the country, when we knew that obviously there was safety data and they were very safe to administer in the population, and with those rare complications, side effects, adverse events, it was okay. So on that basis was when WHO endorsed it, and the regulatory authority in Fiji endorsed it as well for utilization. Otherwise, without safety data, it's almost difficult or impossible to bring in a vaccine, because we don't trial vaccines here in Fiji with our population. We administer what's been trialed already overseas. So give it time for that younger population, especially the newborns, even up one above. When we have safety data on that, we can definitely progress. But in the interim, definitely we're exploring the 12 to 17-year-olds, and we're trying to ensure that at least they get this vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine or Moderna, whichever possible.
And as we speak, we would like to confirm to you that Pfizer and Moderna are going through trials at the moment. Of course, as Dr. Rachel has pointed out, for 12 to 17-year-olds already being administered in the US and Europe. Of course, for the others, from 6 months to 2 years and 2 years to 5 years, trials are still underway. So let's wait for that safety data to come in, and let's wait for the Ministry of Health on the decisions they make after carrying out that safety analysis for all our children. My question in relation to anti-vax messages, of course, there's still some people confused on whether they should get vaccinated. There's a group from Nosori under investigation at the moment for going around different places with anti-vax messages. A lot of fake news about vaccination still going on about the vaccine is the mark of the beast. What can you say about your teams when they're going out now? Maybe it's a good time to talk about what were some of the major obstacles that you faced earlier on when vaccination started, where you had your staff even threatened and by some aggressive people, and how things have changed and what are some of the challenges you're still facing?
An important question, and I must say so much has progressed over the last months, I'd say. And especially with the anti-vax messaging going out and, debunking a lot of them as well at the same time, through so many Q&As, live Q&As in so many different mediums with you as well. So, but having said that, when we were initially getting the anti-vax messages out there, and people were getting influenced by it because of obviously it just going like a wildfire on social media and other platforms, we definitely, our staff did face a lot of challenges in getting the vaccines out to people, to the communities. There'd be sometimes we'd go to certain communities, we'd get almost just a few people wanting to be jabbed, even one or two out of that whole a few hundreds of people. But I must say time has changed and a lot of people have learned. We had a lot of partnership going on with, this whole of government approach we've had, and especially with the Ministry of E-Toke Affairs and the others, generally right across the board, even with the tourism sector and all. So basically through that, we got the information out there. We debunked a lot of that anti-vax information, especially with the beast, mark of the beast, working with faith-based organizations and some other organizations as well, and just getting that right information out there. And I must say, from that time till now, we've seen significant amount of changes. And as we progress with vaccinating close to 500,000 individuals in Fiji with first dose, we've seen those villages who turned our staff away, calling them back in again to get the vaccine. And that's, I think that's been only in their favor, especially as we see a lot more cases in the Western Division. I know Nandi faced a lot of significant issues around that, but gradually now I'm hearing that all that initially denied are now welcoming it.
Now, also, my final question, you have your teams out in places where there's been widespread community transmission, Suvarnasori now in the Western Division. How are you coping? And of course, you've had your own challenges in your teams getting compromised while going out to get vaccinated. How are you managing in those situations?
You're right. Our teams in the very early days, from the very early days, were getting compromised to a certain level. If one team was down, the others were working, or if not, a portion of the team were down or something. But having said that, we've overcome it now. I mean, we started off in the very early days with not so many cases. That was when it was in the hundreds early, I think, though in the 3 digits, but in the lower hundreds. And from that stage, we actually started, wearing our protective gears, protective PPEs. I mean, that was one thing essential for our teams. But having said that, we've overcome those challenges. Now we're in a space where we just keep going, protective gears that they're provided with. And the perseverance within the staffs to just keeping at it's one thing that's helpful. And despite the cases right across Fiji, there is that one thing that's in the know of all healthcare workers, especially within the vaccination team. When we talk about COVID-19 and vaccination and containment or mitigation, there is literally 2 sets of teams there. One is looking solely after the mitigation or containment efforts, like swabbing and all that. There is literally a separate team working on vaccination. So that's where the focuses are. And with a team that's focusing on the vaccination, solely focusing on that, and with protective gears, we just continue to persevere, because we know that while that is catching up on us in terms of numbers of cases, we need to up our numbers in terms of vaccination as well. So apart from the fact that we used PPEs and a whole lot of other measures of keeping in bubbles and working, we know for a fact that there is a lot of there is this vaccination program that we know is a proven public health measure of vaccination that works, and that's one of the things that keeps the team going, especially in reaching targets for their population.
And your whole team, in relation to the vaccination numbers, of course, as you've heard, vaccination targets now over 90%. That is the target, to ensure that we get as many people vaccinated as possible. Over 90% is the aim. We are sitting at close to 90% for first dose. A long way to go at the moment to get the second doses, and children's vaccination decisions yet to be made on that. Thank you, and have a great morning.